I'm Victoria Chen, and the night my sister physically blocked me from entering my own luxury hotel was the moment everything changed. For 3 years, my family had dismissed my career, convinced I was struggling in some entry-level hospitality job. They had no idea I owned the Grandview Metropolitan, the most exclusive hotel in downtown Seattle, until my security chief approached that entrance and greeted me as the owner in front of everyone. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. Let me take you back to how this all began. Growing up in Bellevue, I was always the overlooked middle child. My older sister Jessica was the academic star, valedictorian, full scholarship to Stanford, MBA from Wharton. My younger brother Marcus became the athletic golden boy, state champion swimmer, college recruitment offers. Then there was me, quiet Victoria, who spent her free time studying hotel management magazines and sketching floor plans for imaginary resorts. My parents, Dr. Helen Chen and attorney David Chen, were successful professionals who understood traditional paths to success. When I announced I wanted to study hospitality management instead of pre-med or law, the disappointment was palpable. Hospitality management, my mother asked during a tense family dinner. Victoria, that's essentially learning to be a glorified maid supervisor. We didn't sacrifice everything to give you opportunities just so you could waste them on hotel work. My father was equally dismissive. The service industry isn't a career, it's a stepping stone. You need something substantial, something that builds wealth and status. But I persevered. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through the University of Washington's hospitality program, morning shifts at a downtown hotel front desk, afternoon classes, and evening waitressing at an upscale restaurant. Those years were exhausting but educational in ways my formal studies couldn't match. During my junior year, I met Professor Margaret Liu, who became my mentor. She recognized something my family never did, a natural intuition for luxury service and untapped business potential. You see opportunities where others see problems, she told me after I presented a turnaround strategy for a failing boutique hotel. That's not teachable, Victoria. That's instinct. With Professor Liu's guidance, I secured an internship at Pacific Hospitality Group. While other interns organized supply closets, I spent every spare moment analyzing their operations and quietly developing improvement proposals. 3 months in, I left a comprehensive efficiency report on Regional Director Thomas Park's desk. I'd intended to retrieve it before he returned, but he found it first. The next day, I was called to his office, certain I was about to be fired for overstepping boundaries. Instead, Thomas offered me a management track position upon graduation. This analysis is better than reports from consultants we pay 6 figures, he said, holding up my proposal. We need people who think strategically. When I called my parents with the news, their response was lukewarm at best. Well, at least you'll have steady employment, my mother said. Though management trainee isn't exactly executive level. Jessica just got offered a position at McKinsey & Company. I stopped sharing my career milestones after that conversation. My family didn't know when I was promoted to hotel general manager at 25. They didn't know when I developed a guest retention program that increased Pacific Hospitality's revenue by 28%. They certainly didn't know when I left to start my own luxury consulting firm at 27. Working with struggling luxury properties, I discovered my true calling, seeing potential where others saw problems. My reputation grew quietly but steadily. By 29, I had saved enough and secured enough investor confidence to purchase my first property. The Grandview Metropolitan had been a faded luxury hotel losing money for 3 years. The previous owners were desperate to sell. I saw past the worn carpets and outdated fixtures to the bones of something magnificent, soaring ceilings, original marble work, prime downtown location. The renovation took 8 months and every dollar I could borrow or earn. I lived in a studio apartment, eating ramen and working 18-hour days. When the Grandview reopened, it became Seattle's most exclusive boutique hotel within 6 months. 2 years later, I purchased the entire building, not just the hotel floors, but the luxury condominiums above and the high-end retail spaces below. I moved into the penthouse suite, finally allowing myself to enjoy what I'd built. My family remained completely oblivious. In their minds, I was still struggling in middle management somewhere, barely making ends meet. I never corrected them, partly because they never asked detailed questions, and partly because their assumptions revealed more about their limitations than mine. My closest confidant became James Rodriguez, the security chief I hired when I acquired the building. A former Secret Service agent with an MBA in security management, James understood both the operational and strategic aspects of protecting luxury properties and high-net-worth individuals. "You know your family has no idea what you've accomplished," he observed during one of our weekly security briefings. "They know what they want to know," I replied. Which apparently isn't much about my actual life. The catalyst for everything came through a seemingly innocent family group chat. My mother was planning a surprise celebration for my father's 65th birthday. Looking at venues for Dad's party. Considering the Grandview Metropolitan, heard it's supposed to be amazing but probably out of our budget. Thoughts? I stared at my phone in disbelief. The Grandview, my Grandview, was on her shortlist. For a moment, I considered revealing the truth immediately, but something held me back. Perhaps it was an opportunity to finally demonstrate rather than explain my success. The Grandview has an excellent reputation, I texted back carefully. Their private dining rooms are supposed to be exceptional. Very expensive though, my mother replied. Probably beyond what you could contribute anyway. Jessica has offered to cover the majority of costs. The casual dismissal stung, but I was accustomed to it. I could look into potential industry discounts, I offered. That would be helpful, dear. Though I'm not sure what connections you'd have at that level. That afternoon, I called my general manager, Patricia Wong. "Patricia, my family is planning my father's birthday dinner here next month. They have no idea I own the property." Patricia's laugh was immediate and delighted. "Are you serious? This is like something from a movie. Here's what I need. When they call for reservations under the Thompson party, give them our premier private dining room, the Cascade Suite. Quote them exactly 60% of the standard rate. I'll cover the difference. And when you arrive?" I paused, considering. "Treat me like any other guest initially. I'll reveal the truth when the moment feels right." Over the following weeks, I monitored the reservation process. My mother called multiple times, questioning the surprisingly reasonable rate and demanding to know what was included. My executive chef created a custom menu, and I arranged for my father's favorite wines to be available. 2 days before the event, Jessica called me directly, a rare occurrence. "So you're actually coming to Dad's party?" Her tone carried the usual skepticism. "Of course. It's an important milestone. Mom mentioned you somehow got a discount at the Grandview. How exactly did you manage that? It's not like you're a VIP or anything." The perfect opportunity to reveal the truth presented itself, but Jessica's dismissive tone made me want to wait for a more impactful moment. "I've done some consulting work in the hospitality industry," I said vaguely. "Professional courtesy." "Right." She didn't bother hiding her disbelief. "Well, try to dress appropriately. The Grandview is very upscale. I could lend you something if you don't have anything suitable." I glanced at the custom Armani suit I was wearing for a business meeting and smiled to myself. "I'll manage. Just don't embarrass us," she added before hanging up. Those words would prove remarkably prophetic. The evening of my father's birthday arrived with perfect theatrical timing. Light rain was falling, making the Grandview's glass facade sparkle under the carefully designed lighting system I'd personally approved. I'd arranged to arrive separately, claiming a last-minute business commitment would make me slightly late. In reality, I wanted to observe my family's entrance from the security monitors in my private office. Dressed in a midnight blue Tom Ford dress, elegant but unmistakably expensive, I watched the screens as my family arrived. My mother, wearing what I recognized as her special occasion St. John's suit, immediately began inspecting everything from the marble floors to the floral arrangements. My father looked impressed but uncomfortable, clearly aware they were somewhere far more upscale than their usual venues. Jessica arrived with her husband David, both dressed like they were attending the Met Gala rather than a family dinner. She immediately took charge, speaking loudly to the concierge and gesturing dramatically as though she belonged there. I watched Patricia personally greet them and escort them to the Cascade Suite, where champagne and appetizers were waiting. My mother's surprise was evident even through the small security screen. I'd authorized far more than the reduced rate she'd been quoted. "Everything is prepared according to your specifications," my executive chef, Marcus Kim, said as he appeared at my office door. "The wine has been decanting for 2 hours, and we've included your father's favorite bourbon for after dinner." "Perfect, Marcus. Thank you." I stood, smoothing my dress. "I think it's time for my entrance." As planned, I texted James to take his position near the hotel's main entrance. The timing needed to be precise. I exited through my private elevator, left the building entirely, and walked around to approach from the main entrance like any other guest. I wanted to experience exactly what any arriving guest would experience. I approached the grand entrance just as my father's golf partners were being directed to the private dining room. As I prepared to follow them inside, Jessica emerged from the ladies' lounge, her eyes immediately landing on me with that familiar critical assessment. "Victoria, you actually showed up." She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my dress, shoes, and the understated but clearly genuine diamond earrings I wore. "Wow, you really went all out. Rent that dress?" "Hello, Jessica. You look lovely too." I refused to engage with her implicit criticism. She frowned, perhaps disappointed I hadn't given her more ammunition. "Mom was worried you'd cancel last minute or show up looking like you just left whatever job you're working these days." "I'm exactly where I want to be professionally," I said honestly. "Right." She glanced toward the entrance, then her eyes widened. "Oh, please tell me you didn't try to bring a date to Dad's birthday dinner." "This is family only, Victoria." I turned to see James entering in his perfectly tailored suit. Before I could explain, my mother appeared beside Jessica. "Victoria, finally. We've been here for 30 minutes. She barely glanced at me, her attention shifting immediately to James. "And who is this? We didn't plan for additional seating." "This is," I began, but James smoothly interjected. "Good evening, Mrs. Chen. I'm James Rodriguez, head of security for the Grandview Metropolitan. I just needed a brief word with Ms. Chen." My mother's expression shifted instantly from irritation to embarrassment. "Security? Victoria, what have you done now?" Before I could respond, Jessica stepped directly in front of me, physically blocking my path toward the restaurant entrance as though preventing me from fleeing. "Is there a problem with her reservation?" Jessica asked James, speaking about me as if I weren't present. "We can cover her portion if that's the issue." My mother moved closer, her voice dropping to that particular whisper that somehow carried perfectly despite its lowered volume. "Victoria, don't embarrass the family. If you're having financial problems again, you should have said something before coming to a place like this." The lobby had grown quiet, with several guests and staff members pausing to observe the unfolding drama. Patricia had appeared near the restaurant entrance, watching with barely concealed amusement. She caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in question. I gave her an almost imperceptible nod. "Actually," James said, his professional tone unwavering, "I wanted to inform Ms. Chen that her special arrangements for this evening have been completed according to her specifications." "Special arrangements?" My mother looked confused. "What special arrangements?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "Mom, she probably asked for the cheapest wine option or something. Can we please go back to the party? David is telling Dad about his new partnership." She turned, attempting to guide my mother away while still blocking my path. That's when James cleared his throat loudly. "Mrs. Chen, Jessica, perhaps you're unaware that you're currently preventing the owner of this establishment from entering her own property." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother froze mid-step while Jessica slowly turned back toward me, her expression caught between disbelief and dawning horror. "Excuse me," my mother finally managed. Patricia chose that perfect moment to approach, extending her hand to me with practiced deference. Miss Chen, everything is prepared for your father's celebration. The chef has included all your requested items, and the 1947 Bordeaux you selected from your personal wine collection pairs beautifully with the prime rib. My mother's face had drained of color. Your personal wine collection? I smiled, finally stepping around my stunned sister. Yes, Mom. From my wine cellar here at the Grandview. I've been meaning to tell you, I own this hotel. Actually, I own the entire building. Jessica's mouth opened and closed without sound. My mother grabbed the nearest chair for support. That's not possible, she whispered. And yet, here we are. I gestured toward the restaurant. Shall we join Dad and the others? I believe we have a celebration to continue. As we walked toward the private dining room, every staff member we passed greeted me by name with the respect reserved for not just any owner, but one they genuinely admired. The chorus of "Good evening, Ms. Chen," and "Lovely to see you, Ms. Chen," created a symphony of recognition that made denial impossible. Just before entering the Cascade suite, Jessica grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. "Why didn't you tell us?" she hissed, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. I looked at her hand until she released me, then straightened my sleeve before meeting her eyes. "You never asked," I said simply. "None of you ever asked about my actual life." Then I opened the doors to greet my father, whose expression shifted from confusion to astonishment as the staff welcomed me not as a guest, but as their boss. The remainder of my father's birthday dinner unfolded like a play where half the cast had received entirely different scripts. My father, initially shocked into silence, recovered more gracefully than my mother or sister. His surprise gradually transformed into something resembling pride. "So this is why you've been so private about work," he said during a quiet moment. "You built all this?" "This hotel and 2 others," I confirmed, watching his eyes widen further. "Why keep it from us?" I considered my answer carefully. At first, it was because I wasn't sure I'd succeed. Then, when I did, it became clear that you all had fixed ideas about who I was and what I was capable of. After a while, it seemed easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe. He nodded slowly, looking troubled. "I suppose we haven't given you much reason to share your successes." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of their dismissive treatment I'd ever received from any family member. My mother spent the rest of the evening in rigid shock, maintaining forced pleasantries while shooting me looks that fluctuated between disbelief and something that might have been betrayal. Jessica oscillated between awkward attempts to align herself with my newfound status and sullen withdrawal. When the celebration finally concluded around midnight, I arranged for luxury transportation for all guests and gift baskets featuring items from the hotel's signature collection. My father embraced me warmly. "I'm proud of you, Victoria," he whispered. "More proud than I've ever properly expressed." Jessica lingered after the others had left, clearly struggling with what to say. "So all those times we thought you couldn't afford family vacations or contribute to gifts," she began. "I was building this," I finished, gesturing to the elegant surroundings around us. "And I did contribute. The anniversary trip to Italy you thought Dad paid for? The Christmas checks from Aunt Susan? The new car Mom received for her birthday last year? All from me." Jessica stared at me, genuine shock replacing her earlier defensiveness. "Why would you do that anonymously?" "Because you needed the help, and I knew you wouldn't accept it directly." After she left, I returned to my penthouse suite, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a glass of the same Bordeaux we'd served at dinner. James knocked softly before entering. "That was quite an evening," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "How are you feeling?" I considered the question, swirling the wine in my glass. Relieved. Vindicated. Exhausted. Hopeful. "And now what happens?" "Now," I said, suddenly certain of my next steps, "I set boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries for the first time in my life. This isn't about revenge or punishment. It's about establishing the respect I should have had all along." Over the following months, I worked to rebuild my family relationships on more authentic foundations. It wasn't easy, decades of established patterns don't change overnight. There were setbacks, moments when my mother reverted to old comparisons or Jessica's competitive nature resurfaced. But the difference now was that these instances were recognized, addressed, and corrected rather than accepted as inevitable. My father proved most adaptable, visiting the Grandview regularly and taking genuine interest in my business operations. He even began offering strategic advice when requested, not with the patronizing tone of the past but with professional respect for a fellow entrepreneur. My mother's transformation was more gradual but still meaningful. She stopped dismissing my career and ceased the unfavorable comparisons to Jessica. The critical difference was her willingness to try, to ask questions, to acknowledge her limited understanding, to visit my properties with genuine curiosity rather than skepticism. Jessica and I established a more honest, if sometimes awkward, relationship. The competitive dynamic hadn't disappeared entirely, but acknowledging it had diminished its power. We even collaborated on a legal conference hosted at the Grandview, combining her professional connections with my hospitality expertise. 6 months after that revealing birthday dinner, I stood on my penthouse balcony watching the Seattle skyline glow in the sunset. The view never failed to remind me of everything I'd built despite the doubts and dismissals. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Saw the article about your expansion into Portland. So proud of what you've accomplished on your own terms. That takes real courage. The message brought unexpected tears to my eyes, not from sadness or lingering hurt, but from the simple power of finally being seen and valued for exactly who I was. I'd learned that the greatest revenge against those who underestimate you